warm welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is the Newshour Special Edition this Saturday evening, and I'm Hina Gambhir. Viewers, on Monday, leaders of India and the United States of America announced the trade deal in the wee hours today. Around 4 a.m., both the countries released the much-awaited framework for interim agreement via a joint statement. Now, this marks a significant period in India's global trade dealings. Remember, on 27th of January only, India signed a free trade agreement with 25-nation bloc EU, which was in the making for decades. The opinion is divided as far as Indo-US deal is concerned. Some say it's a win. Some say it is abject surrender. Government claims it's a balanced win for both sides. Let's first decode it for you. The framework that was mentioned in the joint statement. Firstly, the 25% penalty for buying Russian oil for India has been removed. There's going to be 18% tariffs now instead of 50% for Indian exporters. It's going to benefit textiles and apparel sector, leather and footwear sector, plastic and rubber products, organic chemicals, home decor and artisanal goods, along with machinery and industrial equipment. All of these are going to now attract 18% tariff instead of 50% earlier. Then there's going to be absolutely zero duty as far as generic medicines are concerned. There's going to be zero tariff on gems and diamonds as well as aircraft parts. But there are no concessions from India's side on farm and the dairy sector products. Now, this is a very, very sensitive area. India has said no entry to these sectors when it comes to farm and dairy specifically. But there's going to be preferential access for India in sensitive American sectors. India is going to buy $500 billion worth of US goods over a period of 5 years. India has opened up its market for US industrial goods and certain agricultural products. Government says this ensures our farmers remain protected. And viewers, this is being seen now as a stepping stone for a full bilateral agreement between India and the United States of America. Now, the government says that the deal strikes a careful balance, opening up opportunities for Indian exporters, securing better market access in the US, while firmly protecting India's farmers, MSMEs, and all sensitive sectors. Listen in to what Union Minister Piyush Goyal said.
जो बायलैटरल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट का पहला अंश अब तय किया है, उसके तहत 50% की जो रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ भारत के निर्यात के ऊपर अमेरिका में लगती थी, वो अब 50% से घटकर मात्र 18% लगेगी.
Providing opportunities for our MSMEs, our farmers, our fishermen, our youth, our women, and the very talented and skilled people of India.
मीट उसमें कोई रियायत नहीं दी गई है, पोल्ट्री कोई रियायत नहीं दी गई है, डेयरी के कोई वस्तु के ऊपर कोई रियायत नहीं दी गई है.
A very significant element embedded in the interim deal is an indirect reference to China. The relevant paragraph says, and I quote, the US and India, in fact, both these countries are going to establish rules and origins that ensure that the benefit of the agreement accrue predominantly to the US and India. The hint is that the agreement will try to ensure China does not benefit from the deal. Commerce Minister made a cryptic remark when asked about this. He said, "Samajhdar ko ishara kafi hai." While the government has called this a big victory, opposition has called it surrender. Congress specifically has called it a trap deal, claiming that the trade deal has opened agricultural sector to American products, which will harm our farmers. Opposition says this deal is heavily tilted in favor of the United States of America. Listen.
उससे फायदा ही फायदा होने वाला. मैं फिर कह रहा हूं, चाहे वो डील यूरोपियन यूनियन से हुई हो, अमेरिका से हुई हो या बाकी किसी देश से, भारत के किसानों के फायदे में है, भारत की जनता के फायदे में है। हमारे किसान उनसे सुरक्षित कुछ नहीं आने वाला।
भारत की अर्थनीति अभी मजबूत स्थिति में है। हमारे कई विश्व के कई देशों के साथ, यूके के साथ, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ, न्यूजीलैंड के साथ और अभी अभी यूएसए के साथ हमारी वाणिज्य वार्ता संपन्न हुई है। इसके कारण भारत की उद्यमियों को, भारत की कारोबार को बहुत बड़ा गति मिलेगा। इसमें देश की अर्थनीति और मजबूत होगा।
40% सामान हमारा अमेरिका जाता था, वो वैसे ही ड्यूटी फ्री था, उस पे वैसे ही टैरिफ नहीं लगते थे। इस डील से भारत के किसानों की कमर भी तोड़ी जा रही है। वहां उत्सव हो रहा है। अमेरिका के किसान इस डील से प्रसन्न हैं, खुश हैं, जश्न मनाया जा रहा है।
नरेंद्र मोदी ने हस्ताक्षर कर दिया है। इस देश के करोड़ों किसानों की बर्बादी का हस्ताक्षर उन्होंने अमेरिका के साथ कर दिया है। किस दबाव में किया मोदी जी आपने? देश को बताइए। सदन में झूठ क्यों बोला? देश को बताइए।
Viewers, the trade deal was in the making since February 2025. Between July to September, we saw President Trump aggressively hike tariffs against India to 50%. 25% was a penalty for buying oil from Russia. In response, Prime Minister Modi visited Tianjin in September 2025. Chinese president was seen quoting Russian President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. US-India relationship seemed to have entered a diplomatic free fall. A lot of effort went in to put the talks back on rails. So tonight we discuss with our experts. Is the deal a win for the US as being claimed by the opposition? Or is the deal a pragmatic best step forward? Many are branding the deal as a surrender. Can they suggest a better alternative? To discuss it, let's welcome our guests. We have Sanju Verma, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Tushar Gupta, who's a political analyst, Ashok Sajanhar, former diplomat, Brahmachalani, strategic affairs expert, Kamruzaman Chaudhary, political analyst. We also have with us Dr. Santosh Mehrotra, senior economist. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on this debate. Sanju Verma, let's start with you. BJP has called it a decisive victory for India. Opposition says that the deal is heavily tilted in favor of the United States of America, and hence it cannot really be a matter of celebration.
You know, Hina, a couple of things very quickly. First and foremost, the overall tariff rate comes down from a range of anywhere between 25 to 50%, dramatically down to 18%. The second point, the weighted average tariff rate is even lower. It's not 18%, but 14.6%. The third important point, reciprocal tariff on a whole host of goods and services will be zero. The fourth point, it gives India, especially our 7 crore MSMEs, access to the United States of America's $30 trillion market. The other thing, which is very important, is that it empowers India's standing in the GVC, the global value chain. Most importantly, the fact of the matter is that any trade deal, which you mentioned at the start, not many people are paying attention to this. Rules of origin is the single biggest criteria which decides whether a deal, a trade deal or an FTA is successful or not. And why is that so? Because rules of origin criteria defines what are economically national goods. That in turn decides whether a country like India will get preferential treatment with respect to the FTA. And I think with respect to the rules of origin, ROO, we've done a phenomenal job in ensuring that the economic nationality definition of goods is comprehensively covered so that the deal is a comparative advantage and not a disadvantage for India.
Okay.
Fruits, vegetables, milk, agri-products, dairy, you know, we have been completely ring-fenced. We have been completely insulated from any punitive tariffs in the future as well. And I think, as Piyush Goyal has said repeatedly, and so has Prime Minister Modi, this is a deal which is making India future ready.
Okay.
It is the path to a future ready Viksit Bharat.
Okay. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, how will you like to respond? Because we've been speaking with exporters who were directly impacted because of 50% Trump tariff. they are happy, they are celebrating. They don't belong to a political party. They are happy because they'll be able to export in the market again that they worked on for many years. I'm specifically talking about textile sector, apparel sector, gems and jewelry, shrimp sector specifically. Because, for them, it's a big relief from 50 to 18%. Second, as Sanju Verma mentioned, it's a $30 trillion market that's going to be opened up. And like they say, when it is a deal, you have to offer something in order to get something back. I mean, there are no free lunches anywhere in the world in any case. Kamruzaman Chaudhary.
Yeah, Hina, over the years, India, whether it was under UPA government, whether it was exclusively under the Congress government or even under Vajpayee's government, India always negotiated from a point of strategic autonomy. We always had an equal negotiating terms to deal with our trade deal partners. Now, what happened was from a non-alignment to a multi-alignment to complete surrender to American negotiations this time. 200 years ago, British came into India through the East India Company and captured our industry, our resources. Now America is coming backdoor through this BJP government, trying to capture our resources. Subsidy-based exports from America are going to reach India, affect our farmers, their produce out here. It's not only the agricultural sector. What about the manufacturing and the MSME sector? What about the loss of policy sovereignty that India's, whether you consider the digital data policies, pharmaceutical patents, e-commerce regulation, or you can see how the generic drugs, that drug industry is going to be affected because of this trade deal. You have the trade deficit reality check. And you see one most important thing, over the years, when India started to import Russian oil, we were all told that India's dependency on MEA countries' oil will be very much reduced now, and we won't be dependent on the MEA countries' oil. Now, under what condition has India surrendered and said it's no longer going to import the 40% that is now importing crude oil from Russia? Under what circumstances this Modi government surrendered to the American negotiation? What was the difference when we withdrew from the RCEP in 2016?
Okay.
What changed? RCEP withdrawal versus this US trade deal. What is the difference? Can anybody on top of the panel out here can explain to us what is the difference between the two deals?
Okay.
I can accept. They told during the RCEP withdrawal that we cannot exceed because our farmers will be affected.
Okay.
Now, when this trade deal is going through, just mere rhetorics from the commerce minister doesn't help.
Okay.
The entire country is being mortgaged to the US trade interest as whose behest.
Okay.
We need an answer today. Otherwise, this government needs to go immediately.
Got it. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, you've made a couple of points.
Must resign immediately.
Okay. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, you've made a couple of points, and I would like to touch upon each one of those one by one, because we've got a very interesting panel here, viewers. We've got the representatives of political parties. We've got those who understand how diplomacy functions. We've also got those who understand how, one should look at the economy in the current geopolitical circumstances that we are in. And you will get both the views here. Both sides are covered here. That's why I'm saying it's a very interesting panel. You heard the politics part of it, the politics around it that we are witnessing. Now, I want to touch upon the way India managed to negotiate this deal. And I want to engage with Mr. Brahmachalani and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Ashok Sajjanhar, sir, to you first. Now, one thing is being said that it is complete surrender. And whatever the government is saying is actually rhetorical. It's not really going to help India quite a lot. Another aspect that's being touched upon is that something that Donald Trump, the US president, is saying, and now the White House statement has also mentioned that India has given a commitment to not buy Russian oil at all. But from the Indian side, we've not really heard anything on this. No commitment. Or is there a commitment or no commitment? We don't know, because the government is not saying anything. How will you assess this situation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hina, for having me on your show. So let me make a couple of points. I don't think this is any surrender. There's no surrender at all. If India had to surrender, we would have surrendered in July and August when Mr. Trump had threatened 25% reciprocal tariffs, 25% Russian tariffs. We would have surrendered at that time. We did not do anything of that thought. We were prepared to wait. And Mr. Trump, in his own wisdom, when he saw India was slipping out of his hands because India had done the so-called mother of all deals with the European Union, we had done with so many other countries, with UK, with EFTA, with New Zealand, with Oman, etc., then he thought, and he came to realize that India was not going to be making any more concessions whatsoever. Our red lines were red lines, and we are not going to budge on that. And that is when he decided to come. A couple of other points. I'll come to the Russian oil a little later, if you permit, Hina. The headline is, of course, 50% has come down to 18%, so that is great for our exporters. What Piyush Goyal, Commerce Minister, also said in his press conference, that half of the items that are being exported by us, we are exporting about $86-87 billion, about $45 to $50 billion are going to get access into the US market zero duty, duty free. So that is going to be a great help. The next point is our tariffs are much better than the tariffs of our competitors in South Asia. We have tariff of 18%. Others have 19%, 20%, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, everyone. So we will be able to export our products in a much better way.
Right.
Our labor intensive, because that is where our strength is, and that is what was suffering as a result of the 50% tariffs, whether it is, you mentioned that, let me not belabor the point except to sort of, quickly say that, our textile, apparel, footwear, leather, marine products, gem and jewelry, pharma, etc. are going to get a boost as far as we go. The next point is in terms of the agriculture. What they are saying that, it's a surrender. It is not. There are so many countries, Hina, in the world which are very efficient in agriculture. New Zealand is one of them. Australia is one of them. We were able to withstand their pressure. We did not wilt. In fact, in New Zealand, there were questions raised to the government in the parliament why you did not get your dairy products into India. We have withstood all pressures, on any of these cereals, soya bean, on corn, maize, etc. We have withstood the pressure here. The last point that I will make here is, what is mentioned about the RCEP. RCEP was, even now, $120 billion coming from China, $15 billion being exported to China. Even without a free trade deal, we have a trade deficit of $115, $120 billion. If we had signed a trade deal, there would have been the trade deficit would have been much greater.
Right.
As far as is concerned, Hina, we have a trade surplus. We have a trade surplus of $45 billion.
That's the problem that Donald Trump always had, that India is sending more to the United States of America than actually buying from the United States of America.
Absolutely.
And any country will actually prefer a situation wherein we export more and import less. That was the biggest problem that Trump had. Yes, finish your point, sir.
Yeah, so that was on the, and the Russian oil, as you said very correctly, I'm sure, whatever has come from United States, White House, the fact is our relations with Russia are so strong.
Right.
I'm sure, the clarification will come from the government, from MEA, from Mr. Hardeep Puri, the oil minister.
Okay.
We are not going to succumb. We have not done it for the last 4 years.
Right.
We are not going to be succumbing.
I think the pertinent point is that if we had to surrender, we could have done it in August. We could have done it in September. There were many opportunities we didn't. Okay, interesting views there. Mr. Brahmachalani, why do you say it adds another feather to Trump's extractive cap? Did India have a lot of elbow room during the negotiations?
Well, I think the larger question is whether this bilateral relationship with the US, which is a critical relationship for India, whether that relationship can be salvaged now that there is a framework interim deal. This interim deal has stopped the immediate hemorrhaging in US-India ties. It's not going to heal the relationship because trust, once eroded, is not easily rebuilt, especially when one side retains the unilateral ability to punish the other. For example, in the executive order that Trump has signed and was released after the joint statement between the US and India, he's keeping India under the threat of renewed sanctions. He is, in fact, the most interesting aspect about the Russian oil part is that he has set up a monitoring mechanism headed by the Secretary of Commerce. So under this monitoring, any kind of Indian purchases of Russian oil, direct or indirect, indirect is a very loaded term because it can also apply to refined fuels like diesel, jet fuel, and other products that are allegedly made from crude oil originating from Russia. So he has kept the sword hanging over India, and we should not forget how he has leveraged America's strengths to gain some important concessions. It's one of the first principles of international negotiations is that you do not negotiate with the other side or with a gun to your head, right? This is what Piyush Goyal himself said a few months ago. But in reality, India did precisely that. And that's the reason why, compared to what India was willing to offer in July, when an interim deal was, at least the Indian side believed that there was an interim deal already with Washington, but President Trump refused to endorse that deal.
Right.
Between July and now, between July and February, India has been forced to make extra concessions. Now, some concessions were initially on the table, but certainly there are some important aspects. For example, Hina buying $500 billion worth of American products over the next 5 years. Right now, India only imports $40 billion worth of American products. This means 2.5 times increase annually. That is $100 billion annual imports of American goods. But India has an overall trade deficit with the world. And if India were to buy $100 billion worth of American goods every year, and this is one-sided commitment, there's no reciprocal American commitment to buy $100 billion worth of Indian goods, for example, or even $50 billion worth of goods from India. It's a one-sided commitment. If India were to buy, let's say, $100 billion worth of American products every year, without a dramatic increase in Indian exports to America, this would lead to a huge jump in India's overall
I will get
merchandise
Sanju Verma to
deficit.
respond to the point that you've made, that there's only one-sided commitment here that we are seeing. And second point is going to be about Russian oil purchase, how US is going to monitor our energy purchases that are going to happen. But before that, let me also take in a word from Dr. Santosh Mehrotra. Dr. Santosh Mehrotra, as an economist, how do you see this deal for our country, for our industries?
So my first reaction is, of course, one of relief from the point of view of our exporters, especially our labor-intensive exporters, because our labor-intensive exports involve jobs. They involve hundreds and thousands of jobs in gems and jewelry and leather and footwear and textiles and apparel and garments and so on. So to that extent, that's what you began with, and I think your understanding and my own understanding of my conversations with the exporters is much the same. Having said that, let me just elaborate on some points that have so far not been made. One is that the pharmaceutical products and electronic products were already exempt which is the reason why the effective rate is 14%, not 18%. That's besides the point. That's on the overall trade weighted. The real important point here is that on the relevant products, the labor-intensive ones about which I began by talking about, where our competitors have a rate which is just 1 percentage point higher, the tariff. I'm thinking of Bangladesh, I'm thinking of Vietnam, and they are more competitive. Their productivity is higher than ours. The 1 percentage point tariff advantage is just not going to cut it for us. So we've got a more difficult market ahead of us. That's one point. The second point about 500 billion extra purchase from the United States. Brahma has already made that point very effectively. That's an utterly ridiculous commitment. And who knows if they will monitor it. I'll come back to the monitoring in a second. The point is our export surplus will disappear. It's one of the few countries, major markets of ours, where we have an export surplus. So clearly, if we've committed to buy as much as we have, then where is the export surplus going to be? The third point, I think, which has not been made so far at all, is that we are rejoicing over the fact that we've got not 50%, but 18%. The fact of the matter is that US exports are coming to us at zero. US exports are coming to us at zero tariffs. We are not charging them any tariffs. They are charging us 18%. Where is the symmetry here? There's obvious asymmetry. Fourth, on the monitoring of oil imports from Russia, we should take cognizance of the following fact. A year ago, we were importing 1.8 million tons of oil from the Russian market every year. You know how much it is already down to? So don't tell me that, we haven't been succumbing. We have been succumbing. It's now down to 0.8 million tons. It's down by 1 million tons.
You've made some different points. Very quickly.
If I may, because you don't interrupt anyone else, you seem to
I didn't interrupt you also, sir. I gave you all the time. It's just that I want to go across to other guests.
No, may I finish my last point, madam?
Yes.
Brahma's rightly made a very telling point that the United States has broken trust. I think even the ambassador would agree on that. Now, in that context, let's just recall that a country, Korea, which is part of their alliance network, we are not part of their alliance. It's part of their alliance network. They had struck a deal 6 months ago, but their parliament had to approve their deal, and that deal hasn't so far been approved. And so Trump has slapped on a 25% tariff on them. That's how reliable the United States is. So let's not live in a fool's paradise. That we've done a fantastic job.
Some concerns clearly are valid, and one of them being that they're going to be monitoring our oil purchases. I mean, why should that be happening if Trump keeps on saying that for US, India is a friend and US values India's partnership?
Let them monitor. What's the harm? Where's the problem? In 2022, Joe Biden told Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, that he won't be importing oil from Russia. Did we stop? If anyone wants to understand how Indian oil imports work, they should just look at the data between Jan 2019 and Jan 22, and then Jan 22 and Jan 2026. We were not importing oil from Russia before Jan 2022. We were absolutely not. It wasn't even 1 million barrels. It wasn't even 0.1 million barrels. And yet somehow we believe, somehow our political common sense dictates that this government will prioritize Trump's, personality cult over controlling crude-based inflation nationally in India. Are we seriously going to go down that path? Number two, on the 500 billion question. See, this has also been addressed in the joint statement that will be picking up a lot of hardware. We are looking at a lot of data centers. The budget came up with the tax holiday on data centers. And yes, to some extent, that does address the data localization problem. China has gone for data localization. Europe's GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation that was introduced around 2018, that went for data localization. And we are the ones who've still not gone for it. So if this is a step in data localization, sure, let the imports on hardware front increase. There's no harm. The Boeings, let them come in. What's the harm? Already we've seen Air India and Indigo place a number of orders for Boeings. Kamru Zaman made a point about the pharma. Somehow a pharma policy surrendered. We have 20 times the exports to the US than what we import. Our pharma imports from America make up for just 1.5% of our total imports. I don't know where this fear mongering is coming from. Okay. Number 4, Mr. Chilani made a very important point that where is the commitment from the US side to purchase as many goods as we are committing to buy from them. We have to understand that there are certain things already with the momentum. The software industry, for instance, that's not going to stop overnight. The pharma industry, for instance, that's not going to stop overnight. Textile, gemstones and jewelry, that's not going to stop overnight. Even with the tariffs, the exporters were ahead, but the exports did not stop. Right. Last and final point, we have to understand at the end of the day, our trade deficit with the world is huge. It's huge. And that is where I agree with Mr. Mehrotra here. It's huge. But then we are also competing with China. We are competing with Vietnam. We are competing with Bangladesh. We're competing with n number of countries that have already mastered the manufacturing ecosystem. But we have to start somewhere. Right. We can't here sit and pretend that, oh, nothing is going to work for us ever. Final point on agriculture. Please, I hope the government, and I make a request to Sanju here. Please, the government has to squander all possible energies it may have to address this communication gap which is being used by the opposition parties. We are not opening up our farming and dairy sector. We are just cutting down the duties which were around 30 to 150% on certain agricultural goods that we were importing from America, the value of which annually was not even more than $2 billion.
Okay. Sanju Verma. Yes.
Yes. Hina, one term that has come up for discussion again and again and again is trade deficit. I am an economist, apart from being the national spokesperson of BJP, and I'm sure Mr. Mehrotra will appreciate the point I'm going to make more than anybody else. Trade deficit is not an important parameter any longer. What is relevant in today's times is current account deficit. And do you know something, Hina? In the last 5 financial years, starting from FY22, our current account deficit actually turned into a surplus. FY23, 24, 25 provisional figures for 26. Our average current account deficit is 0.8%.
Right.
And why that is relevant is the lower current account deficit you have, the more leverage you have. And I want to just end by saying under the Congress in 2013, our current account deficit was a dangerous 6.9%. Giving us zero leverage over our trading partners. Okay. So if you want to talk about leverage, talk also. One last point, Hina. Do you know something? What was the annual FDI into the Indian economy during Congress time? It was $10 billion. Today our average FDI every year that we get is $82.7 billion.
You've made your point, Sanju Verma. Ambassador Sajjan Har, another important aspect that I'd like you to touch upon quickly, and that's about what will it do for India-US relationships? Because, what happened over the last few months also impacted the investor sentiment. One of the reasons why investors were pulling out money from Indian stock markets as well. And the immediate impact we saw the moment leaders announced on social media that we have a deal. We saw how the stock markets moved here. So I want to ask you, because you understand diplomacy, can this deal soften US policy towards India, say in the case of H-1B visas to Indians?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hina, for that question. I think it's an excellent point that you make because you're right. All the FIIs were leaving India. We have the example of, how many lakh crores of FII went out from India over the last 1 year. And this will definitely, if we are able to retain this, as we have been able to, over the last so many days, the momentum and the sentiment in the market has been positive. FIIs are going to come back. And I think along with that, this was acting as one obstacle in taking the other elements of the bilateral relationship. You mentioned H-1B, but other elements of the bilateral relationship, whether it is Quad Summit, whether it's Indo-Pacific or the others, it was proving to be a roadblock on all that. I think once this is pushed out of the way, I'm sure that there will be momentum on the other ones also. If you give me just half a quarter of a minute, I'll make a point. Because people here have, sought to suggest that US exports to India will increase to $100 billion. But India's exports to the United States will continue to be $86 billion. Now that is not, expected. The last point here is we are saying we'll have a $500 billion bilateral trade by 2030.
Right.
So in 2030, if US is exporting to me $100 billion, what does it mean? I'm exporting to them $400 billion.
Right.
So, when people are talking about no commitment, they should read the fine print where both sides have agreed. $500 billion.
I'm completely out of time, but I'll just say, this is an interim deal, bilateral trade agreement, of course, so it's going to come later. So much of dust and din has gone up. We will just say, picture abhi baki hai. This is just the trailer, I think, that we've seen. Thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate you all for joining us here on this debate.